Hi, PerspectaWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday, November 27th. Still a lot to talk about this morning as there are two major storm systems impacting much of the country. We have a major snowstorm that's ongoing right now in the upper part of the Midwest. Places like Minnesota and Wisconsin, parts of Iowa still receiving some significant snowfall. That same storm dumped a lot of snow in the Colorado Rockies yesterday. Some areas, one of the biggest snowstorms ever in and around Boulder, Colorado, for example. Fort Collins, Loveland had some tremendous snowfall amounts, more than 20 inches in some spots. Again, ranking as one of the maybe the top 5 snowstorms in parts of Colorado. We have this second storm system that slammed into the California-Oregon coast in the overnight hours. It is now moving inland, producing a lot of damaging wind gusts along coastal sections, heavy rainfall along coastal sections, and some tremendous snowfalls inland. Places like the Sierra Nevada, higher mountains in the eastern part of California receiving tremendous amounts of snow. By the end of this storm, 3 to 4 feet is likely in some of the higher elevation regions of eastern California. Well, when you see lots of color on NOAA's weather warnings map, you know there's a lot of activity going on. First of all, storm number 1 causing winter storm warnings throughout a large portion of the upper Midwest, from Minnesota to Wisconsin, northwestern Iowa. Notice also lots of high wind advisories to the east of there, across the Ohio Valley into much of the Mid-Atlantic region. I really expect these high wind warnings to be extended all the way across the I-95 corridor region, maybe to the coast, because what happens is this low pressure area moves from the upper part of the Midwest very quickly. By tomorrow morning, will actually be located just east of the coastline of Maine, and it'll drag a strong cold front through the Mid-Atlantic region during the evening hours. Winds will pick up in intensity ahead of the front during the daytime, and then really intensify overnight tonight into the morning on Thursday in the D.C., Philadelphia, New York City corridor. I expect wind gusts 40 miles per hour or higher during the late night hours into the morning on Thursday. So again, these high wind advisories can very well be extended later today into the I-95 corridor region, maybe all the way to the eastern seaboard. Meanwhile, look at all this activity out in the western U.S. We have the powerful storm has moved inland. Still some heavy rains along coastal California, even some flood watches in southern Arizona. New Mexico will get some significant snowfall out of this particular system. Again, the Sierra Nevada mountain range, 3 to 4 feet of snow when all is said and done by the time this western storm winds down over the next couple of days, and it will pull out and head towards the Dakotas. Well, I've shown this kind of a plot over the last couple of video discussions because it tells an interesting story. This is the forecast by NOAA for total precipitation amounts through the next 5 days. This is going into Monday morning, and again, only southern Florida really escaping any precipitation, it appears, over the next 5 days. Maybe a little bit in Colorado here, but first of all, out west, all of this precipitation in the form of snow and tremendous snowfall amounts for the Sierra Nevada. Heavy rains along coastal sections from Oregon down to California, not only to San Diego, but into Mexico, all the way down across the Baja California region. And again, some significant rainfall in southern Arizona, significant snow in New Mexico. All this is snow right now. Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota. That's the storm that pulled out of the Colorado Rockies yesterday into the upper part of the Midwest. And again, this initial storm system will end up near the coast of Maine by tomorrow morning. Moves very quickly, and that will promote some very strong wind gusts in the Mid-Atlantic region, the northeast U.S., especially tonight and tomorrow morning. Well, the latest radar map from the nation. This is from Intellicast, WSI's Intellicast.com. First of all, not much going on in terms of shower activity associated with this approaching cold frontal system. There'll be a few showers around in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City during the day as the winds gradually pick up. A relatively mild day, but the rain will certainly not be heavy. and the rain will certainly not be the biggest factor with this approaching frontal system. It'll be the winds. They'll pick up in intensity during the day ahead of the front out of the southwest, and then following the frontal passage out of the northwest tonight and Thursday, gusting past 40 miles per hour or so. Meanwhile, significant snow continues across Wisconsin, Minnesota. It's starting to pull out in Iowa, and they had very heavy snowfall amounts in Colorado, Nebraska, and some parts of Colorado. This storm turned out to be at least in the top 5. In some places, maybe even it'll end up being recorded as the biggest snowstorm ever. Boulder, 22, 23 inches, for example, one of their biggest snowstorms ever. Meanwhile, continues to snow inland across the western U.S. and rain along coastal sections. And again, very, very heavy snow across the higher elevations of eastern California. One final area I want to point out, strong thunderstorms on the southern end of this cold frontal system, now in the deep south. They'll continue to move slowly to the south and east over the next few hours. Well, let's take a look at the 0Z GFS model run. I'm using the 0Z because I trust it a little bit more. It has the very latest upper air data as compared to the 6Z, which is kind of 6 hours old when it comes to radius-on data that's fed into computer forecast models. I always have a little bit more trust in the 0Z and the 12Z model runs, as they have the latest upper air data, which is critical to what goes on down at the surface. Let's look at the upper air, the 500 millibar height anomaly pattern as we begin Wednesday, the busiest travel day of the year. Clearly two separate systems, two major systems, one over the upper part of the Midwest and the other over California. Now let's watch what happens. Again, this ends up moving rather quickly to the east over the next 24 hours. Believe it or not, that surface low that's over the upper Midwest ends up down east of Maine by tomorrow morning. Let's move forward here and first of all focus on this. This moves quickly across the Great Lakes by tonight and then off the New England coastline by tomorrow morning. And again, that will help to swing a strong cold front through the mid-Atlantic region this evening. Winds will pick up in intensity later today ahead of the front and then really intensify overnight tonight into the morning on Thursday with 40 plus miles per hour at times in Philadelphia, D.C., New York City. Very difficult to have balloons in any Thanksgiving Day parade this year. And again, that moves quickly from the upper Midwest to off the New England coastline by tomorrow morning. Now, let's watch what happens with the California storm. The western U.S. storm continues to dive to the south initially as far as the upper air wave of energy is concerned, but then watch what happens now. Keeping in mind where this ended up off the eastern coastline of New England, we'll see where this ends up over the weekend. And the placement is critical in terms of cold air influx into the northeast U.S. Let's move forward here and watch this ridge popping up across the Mississippi Valley. And as we get into the day on Friday, this is a slow mover, begins to make a more rapid move beginning late in the week here on Friday morning. And basically the surface low and the upper air low end up going into the Dakotas, South Dakota. But notice this orange here comes Saturday morning. That represents pretty strong ridging aloft that will act as an atmospheric roadblock. This moves up to the north and east, and instead of continuing up to the north and east, it will be forced to take a turn to the east and then the southeast. Critical in terms of the precipitation possibilities for the weekend in the mid-Atlantic and northeast U.S., because with this being forced to the south, that will allow cold air to dive to the south and east from southeastern Canada into New England, into the mid-Atlantic region, preceding this precipitation event. As a result, snow and ice certainly on the table, maybe even accumulating snow and ice in the mid-Atlantic region, northeast U.S., Saturday night, Sunday time frame. Eventually, this produces a storm that ends up off the mid-Atlantic coastline by Monday morning, which could result in any precipitation changing back to snow. And again, off the mid-Atlantic coastline as opposed to this first system, which is well up off the New England coastline by tomorrow morning. Let's move forward here. Notice now into South Dakota, and it runs into that atmospheric roadblock right here. Very strong ridging aloft over the southern central part of Canada. Watch what happens. It dives now to the east and southeast and ends up on Monday morning sitting right near the mid-Atlantic coastline, quite a bit farther south than this initial wave that allows for a much higher probability of frozen precipitation in the mid-Atlantic and northeast U.S. during the weekend. And that weekend precipitation event looks like it'll take place from about Saturday night into the day on Monday. Well, finally, let's take a look at the surface forecast maps from the Zero-Z GFS model run. Again, rain is not a big deal today with the frontal passage in the eastern part of the nation, at least the mid-Atlantic region. There will be some thunderstorms down in the deep south. Significant snow continues to fall at this hour across Minnesota and Wisconsin, and inland snows out west, rain along the coast. Let's move forward here and look at this tight pressure gradient pattern here around a strong storm system that is over the eastern Great Lakes this evening and then arrives very quickly off of the coast of Maine by tomorrow morning. Strong northwest winds across the Midwest, the Midwest, the Mid-Atlantic, and the Northeast U.S. Again, gusting past 40 miles per hour or so in the overnight hours into the day on Thursday. Meanwhile, heavy rains out in southern Arizona, significant snow in New Mexico, snow inland sections across the western U.S. Let's now move forward here. Very windy conditions continue for much of the day on Thursday, Thanksgiving Day, throughout the northeast U.S. Again, very difficult, if not impossible, to have any balloons in the parade in New York City, for example, on Thursday morning. And meanwhile, let's push ahead here. A couple of important players on the field by Friday morning. First of all, notice this strong high pressure building across southeastern Canada by Friday morning. That represents a very cold air mass that again will slide down the New England area into the mid-Atlantic region, preceding the weekend storm system. And here we go by Friday morning. That storm starts to pull out, heads to the Dakotas. We've got a very strong storm near western South Dakota, 984 millibars by early Saturday. That's when it kind of runs into that atmospheric roadblock. It will not go anywhere farther to the north and east, but it will continue to intensify to a 979 low by Saturday morning. Meanwhile, look in the northeast U.S. We have this influenced by the strong Canadian high, cold air flowing on the east side of this high pressure from southeastern Canada into the mid-Atlantic region, into the northeast U.S., setting us up for potential ice and snow Saturday night and Sunday. Let's move forward here. This storm starts to take a turn to the south and east, and here we go. Some snow and ice breaking out, maybe even as far south as the D.C. metro region Saturday night. Give or take a few hours here. We're still a few days away, but strong cold high pressure anchored to the north spells trouble for the mid-Atlantic region and northeast U.S. Eventually, it may change over to plain rain in the big cities by Sunday, but still some significant ice and snow in the interior sections, especially higher elevation sections of the mid-Atlantic, northeast U.S. as we go through the day on Sunday. And watch where this surface low ends up here by Monday morning. Here we go. We have that storm system off the mid-Atlantic coastline with a change back to snow possible, even into the I-95 corridor region on Monday. We're still several days away from that, but we'll have to watch this, as it could be an initial burst of snow and ice in much of the mid-Atlantic region, maybe a change over to rain on Sunday, but then the possibility exists of a change back to snow late Sunday night going into the day on Monday as this storm system shifts to off the mid-Atlantic coastline, because there will be another influx of a cold air mass on the backside of that storm. So a very active weather pattern. In fact, later in the day on Monday, the GFS from Zero-Z run has significant snowfall across places like eastern Pennsylvania. It's certainly on the table. Very potent pattern here, of full of possibilities. And again, this precip event will be basically Saturday night into the day on Monday for the Mid-Atlantic, for the Northeast U.S. So still a lot going on across much of the nation as we begin the holiday time period. Thanksgiving on Thursday, of course. Strong winds tonight and tomorrow in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast U.S. And watch out for a frozen precipitation event this weekend going into the day on Monday. Could change to rain in between, some ice and snow at the onset, and maybe some snow on the back end as well as we begin the new work weekend. That begins the the new month of December on Sunday and Monday. So very interesting weather pattern as we transition from November to December. That's it for now. For PerspectaWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Orion.